There is a wooden crate in the corner of a root cellar outside Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, and the food sitting inside it was sealed before your grandmother was born. Not preserved with chemicals, not vacuum-packed by a machine, not frozen, not freeze-dried, not flash-canned in some factory 3 states away. Just a handful of bulk staples stored the way pioneer women stored them, sitting quietly in the dark, still edible, still nourishing, still ready to feed a family if the day ever came when the stores stood empty. I held a jar of one of those staples in my own hands last spring, and the woman who handed it to me told me it had outlasted 2 of her husbands and a depression. She wasn't bragging, she was teaching. And what she taught me in that cellar is the same thing I am about to teach you tonight, because somewhere over the last 70 years, this knowledge was quietly traded away, and almost nobody noticed it was gone. You have been told to go to Costco. You have been told that the warehouse club is the smart person's way to prepare, to stock up, to be ready. And I want you to hear me clearly. There is nothing wrong with buying in bulk. The pioneers would have understood the impulse perfectly. But what they would not have understood is paying premium money for food engineered to expire. Because almost everything in that warehouse, even the so-called bulk staples, even the giant bags and the family-size boxes, is built to fail within a year or 2. The pioneer woman did not have a warehouse club. She did not have a freezer. She did not have a refrigerator until the 1940s, and most farm families did not have a reliable one until much later than that. And yet she fed 8, 10, 12 children through winters that would break a modern household in a week. She did it with 10 foods. 10. And every single one of them, stored correctly, the way she stored it, will last not 1 year, not 5 years, but 25 years or longer. I am going to walk you through all 10 tonight, and I am going to save the most important one for last, because it is the one that almost no one talks about anymore, and it is the one that kept whole communities alive when everything else ran out. Stay with me, because what I am about to share took me 3 years to piece together, walking through Amish farmhouses, sitting in Mennonite kitchens, and reading agricultural bulletins so old the paper crumbles when you turn the page. And once you hear it, you will never look at your pantry the same way again. Let me start with the one everyone thinks they understand and almost everyone gets wrong. White rice. Now you are probably thinking, rice, of course, everybody knows about rice. But here is what you do not know. The rice in the 20-pound bag at the warehouse club is not the rice the pioneers trusted. The pioneers, and later the Amish and Mennonite families who carried these methods forward, understood something the modern food industry has every reason to keep quiet. White rice, when the oxygen is removed and it is kept dry and dark, does not spoil for 30 years. Not 3. 30. The starch is stable. The natural oils have been milled away, which is exactly why white rice outlasts brown rice by decades. Brown rice, with its oil-rich bran intact, goes rancid in months. The pioneer woman knew nothing about lipid oxidation or oxygen absorbers in the chemical sense, but she knew that the polished white grain kept and the brown grain didn't, and she chose accordingly. She stored it in stoneware crocks, sealed with wax and a tight lid, kept in the coolest, driest corner of the cellar. Today, you can do the same thing with a food-grade bucket, a mylar bag, and an oxygen absorber that costs a few cents. 40 pounds of white rice, sealed properly, will outlive your mortgage. The warehouse club sells you the same grain and prints a best-by date 18 months out, and you throw away perfectly good food because a label told you to. The second food is one that will surprise you, and it is the one that turned the pioneer pantry from a place of survival into a place of actual nourishment. Dried beans, pinto, navy, kidney, black. It did not matter which variety, because the principle was identical. A dried bean is a seed, and a seed is built by nature to wait. It is designed, biologically engineered by evolution itself, to sit dormant through years of drought and then spring to life the moment conditions are right. The pioneer woman exploited that design, kept dry and sealed away from oxygen, dried beans hold their nutrition for 25 to 30 years. There is one honest catch I will give you, because I am not here to sell you a fantasy. Very old beans take longer to cook and they get harder over the decades. The Amish grandmothers I spoke with had a simple fix passed down through 4 generations. They soaked the old beans overnight with a pinch of baking soda in the water, and the beans softened and cooked through just fine. 1 pound of dried beans is a complete protein when paired with that rice I just told you about, and together those 2 foods alone, rice and beans, kept entire frontier families standing through winters that buried their cabins to the windowsills. 2 foods. Pennies per serving, a quarter-century of shelf life, and the warehouse club would rather sell you a case of protein bars that expire before spring. The third food the pioneer women trusted is so ordinary that you walk past it in every grocery store without a second glance, and that is exactly why the food industry loves it when you forget. Salt. Plain, simple salt. Here is a fact that should stop you cold. Salt does not expire. Ever. It is a mineral. It was here before the pioneers, before the dinosaurs, before there was soil to grow anything in at all, and it will be here long after every product in that warehouse has turned to dust. The pioneer woman did not store salt because she was being frugal. She stored salt because salt was the difference between life and death. Salt was how she preserved everything else. Salt cured the meat that got her family through the months when nothing grew. Salt drew the water out of vegetables so they could be kept for a year in a crock. Salt fermented the cabbage into sauerkraut that fought off the disease we now know as scurvy. A family without salt in 1850 was a family in mortal danger, and they knew it in their bones. 25 pounds of salt, kept dry, will last not 25 years but 500. And it costs you almost nothing today. The pioneers would have considered a barrel of salt more valuable than a shelf of brand-name canned goods, and they would have been right. The fourth food is the one I expected to be wrong about, and the pioneer women proved me wrong in the most humbling way. Honey. Real, raw, unfiltered honey. You have probably heard the line that archaeologists found edible honey in Egyptian tombs, thousands of years old, still perfectly good. It is not a myth. It is true. Honey is the only food on earth that, stored correctly, genuinely never spoils. The reason is chemistry the pioneer woman understood through pure observation. Honey is so low in moisture and so high in natural acidity that bacteria simply cannot survive in it. It is naturally antibacterial. The pioneers used it not only as a sweetener, when sugar was expensive and hard to come by, but as medicine. They spread it on wounds. Because nothing could grow in it, and it kept infection out. They stirred it into hot water for sore throats. They fed it to the weak and the sick. Yes, honey crystallizes over the years, turns thick and grainy and pale. That is not spoilage. That is honey doing exactly what nature designed it to do. Set the jar in warm water, and it returns to liquid gold, every nutrient intact. One pioneer family kept a stoneware pot of honey that served 3 generations. The warehouse club sells you a plastic bear with a best-by date, and somewhere a beekeeper is laughing. The fifth food is the one that built the bread that built America, and it is the staple the pioneer woman could not live without. Hard wheat berries, not flour, and this distinction is the whole secret. Flour, once it is ground, begins to die. The oils are exposed, oxygen attacks them, and within months your flour goes stale and eventually rancid. The pioneer woman never stored flour in bulk. She stored the whole wheat berry, the intact kernel, and she ground it fresh as she needed it, often that very morning. A whole wheat berry kept dry and sealed from oxygen lasts 30 years and longer. There are accounts of wheat recovered from old cellars decades after it was stored that germinated and grew when planted. Think about that. The grain was not just edible. It was still alive. The pioneer woman kept a hand mill in her kitchen, ground her berries into flour, and baked bread that fed her family every single week of every single year. You can buy a 50-pound bag of hard red wheat berries today for the price of a few warehouse club meals, seal it in buckets, and you have bread for a generation. The industry sells you flour because flour expires and forces you back to the store. The wheat berry has no such loyalty to their bottom line. The sixth food is the humble companion to the wheat berry, and it is the one that kept livestock and people alike alive through the leanest seasons. Rolled oats and whole oat groats. The oat is a hardy, forgiving grain. Stored dry and sealed, oats keep their nutrition for 25 to 30 years. The pioneer woman fed oats to her children in the morning to send them out into brutal cold with something warm and dense in their stomachs that would last them till noon. Oatmeal was not a health food trend to her. It was fuel. It was survival in a bowl. The groat, the whole intact oat kernel, lasts even longer than the rolled version because less of its surface is exposed. A family with a barrel of oats, a barrel of wheat, and a sack of dried beans had the foundation of every meal they would ever need, and they could ride out a failed harvest, a brutal winter, or a year when the money simply ran out. The warehouse club puts oats in a cardboard cylinder with a paper lid and tells you it lasts a year. The pioneer woman would have shaken her head and sealed hers away for a quarter century. The seventh food is the one that gets dismissed as old-fashioned, and dismissing it is exactly the mistake the food industry is counting on you to make. Sugar. Plain white granulated sugar. Like salt, sugar does not truly expire. It can harden into a brick if moisture gets to it, but break it up and it is perfectly good, with no real limit on its life. The pioneer woman valued sugar enormously, not because she had a sweet tooth, but because sugar, like salt, was a preservative. Sugar was how she made the jams and the preserves that carried the taste of summer fruit into the dead of February. It was how she kept the bounty of August alive in jars through the starving months. A pioneer family without sugar lost the ability to preserve their fruit. And losing your fruit preserves meant losing a critical source of nutrition and morale when the snow was 4 feet deep and the garden was a frozen memory. 25 pounds of sugar, kept bone dry in a sealed container, will outlast you, and it costs almost nothing. The warehouse club is happy to sell you a bag, but it never tells you that the bag on your shelf, properly stored, will still be sweetening your great-grandchildren's preserves. The eighth food is the one almost everyone forgets, and forgetting it is how families ended up with calories but no real strength. Powdered milk, and alongside it, the fats. A growing child needs more than starch. The pioneer woman knew her children needed dairy and fat to grow strong bones and sharp minds, and in the months when the cow went dry or the family had no cow at all, she relied on stored alternatives. Properly packaged powdered milk, sealed against oxygen and moisture, lasts up to 25 years. The pioneers did not have commercial powdered milk the way we do, but the principle they followed is the same one that makes it work today, the removal of water and oxygen, the two things that let food rot. And for fat, which is the hardest staple of all to store. Because fat goes rancid faster than anything, the pioneer woman turned to rendered lard and tallow, packed tight in crocks and sealed with a layer of its own fat on top to lock out the air. Stored cold and dark, it kept for years. Fat was precious. Fat was energy in its most concentrated form, the thing that kept a body warm through a Dakota January. The warehouse club sells you cooking oil in a clear plastic jug that goes off in a year because light and oxygen are already attacking it on the shelf. The pioneer woman sealed her fat away from both and made it last. The ninth food is the one that prevented disease and kept teeth in heads and children alive, and it is the cleverest preservation the pioneer woman ever practiced: dehydrated and properly stored vegetables and fruits. She could not keep fresh produce through the winter, so she did the next best thing. She dried it, apples sliced thin and hung until leathery. Corn dried hard on the cob and shelled into jars. Beans, peppers, squash, all of it dried until the water that feeds decay was simply gone. A dried apple slice or a jar of dried corn, kept sealed and dark, holds its nutrition for 20 to 30 years. Without this knowledge, frontier families died of deficiency diseases in the spring, their bodies starved of the vitamins that only fruit and vegetables could provide. With it, they walked into March as healthy as they walked out of October. The pioneer woman's dried stores were not a hobby. They were the line between a healthy family and a sick one. The warehouse club sells you a bag of fresh produce that rots in your crisper drawer within 10 days, and you throw a third of it in the trash. The pioneer woman would have wept at the waste. And now we come to the 10th food, the one I told you I was saving for last, the one almost nobody talks about anymore, and the one that, more than any other single staple, separated the families that survived from the families that did not. Because here is the uncomfortable truth that the modern food system has spent decades helping you forget. All 9 of the foods I just gave you are foundational, but they share one weakness. They are all, in their own way, dependent on preparation, on cooking, on grinding, on soaking, on a fire and a pot and time. The 10th food was the pioneer woman's insurance against the day when there was no time, no fire, no strength left to prepare anything at all. The 10th food is hard cheese, sealed in wax. Wait, you are thinking. Cheese? Cheese spoils in 2 weeks, and the cheese in your refrigerator does, because it is fresh, soft, and full of moisture. But the pioneer woman and the dairy families of the old world before her made and stored a different thing entirely. Hard, aged cheese, the moisture pressed out of it, the rind sealed under a thick coat of wax to lock out every trace of air. Stored cool and dark in the cellar, a wheel of properly waxed hard cheese, ages for years, growing sharper and deeper in flavor the whole time, never spoiling, only improving. This was concentrated nutrition that required no cooking, no fire, no preparation of any kind. When a pioneer mother was too exhausted to cook, when a child was sick and needed something nourishing now, when the family was on the move and could not stop to build a fire, the wheel of cheese was there. Protein, fat, calcium, sealed and waiting. The Europeans who carried this knowledge to America had been doing it for 1,000 years, in the Alps, in the cheese caves of France and Switzerland, waxing wheels that aged for years and fed villages through sieges and famines. The pioneer woman brought that knowledge across the ocean and into the root cellar, and it sat there, sealed in wax, the most complete and convenient survival food she owned, asking nothing of her until the moment she needed it most. And here is why I saved it for last. And here is the part that should make you angry, just a little. Because every one of these 10 foods, every single one, was common knowledge in this country within living memory. Your great-grandmother knew all 10. Your grandmother probably knew at least half. And then, somewhere between the 1950s and today, that knowledge was not banned, was not outlawed, was not declared dangerous. It was simply allowed to fade, quietly, deliberately, while a food industry built on expiration dates and constant repurchasing made very sure you never had a reason to remember it. They did not need to take the knowledge from you by force. They only needed to make the warehouse club feel like the smarter, easier, more modern choice and let one generation forget to teach the next. A family that knows how to store 10 foods for 25 years is a family that does not need to come back to the store every week. And a family that does not come back every week is a problem for everyone whose business depends on your dependence. So let me give you the foundation, plainly, before you go. The principle behind every one of these 10 foods is the same, and once you understand it, you will never be fooled by a best-by date again. Food rots because of 4 things: moisture, oxygen, light, and heat. Remove those 4, and most dry staples become nearly immortal. That is the entire secret. That is what the pioneer woman knew in her hands, even when she could not have explained it in a laboratory. Keep it dry. Keep the oxygen out. Keep it dark. Keep it cool. A food-grade bucket, a mylar bag, an oxygen absorber, and a cool, dark corner will do for you exactly what the stoneware crock and the wax seal and the root cellar did for her. The tools have changed. The principle has not changed in 5,000 years, and it will not change in 5,000 more. You do not need a warehouse membership. You do not need a basement full of expensive freeze-dried buckets with a brand name stamped on the side and a price to match. You need rice, beans, salt, honey, wheat, oats, sugar, milk and fat, dried produce, and a wheel of wax cheese in the cool and the dark. 10 foods. The same 10 that carried families across a continent through depressions and droughts and winters that would terrify any of us. The pioneer woman is gone, but she left the instructions, and tonight you have them. So here is my question for you, and I read every single answer in the comments, every one. Of these 10 foods, which one surprised you the most? Was it the wheat berry that outlives the flour, the honey that never dies, or the waxed cheese hiding in the cellar that you never knew could last for years? And here is the second question, the one that matters more. Which one are you going to store first? Tell me below, because the neighbor down the street who just found this channel needs to read your answer too. This is how the knowledge comes back, not from me, from you. One pantry at a time, one cellar at a time, one family at a time. And if you are the kind of person who believes that the old knowledge was worth keeping, that it was taken from us a little too quietly, then you already know what to do. Subscribe and stay with me, because next week I am going to walk you through the single root cellar design that pioneer families used to keep vegetables fresh for 8 months with no electricity, no refrigeration, and nothing but the earth itself doing the work. It is the system the modern home was deliberately built without, and once you see how simple it is, you are going to wonder why anyone ever stopped building them. Until then, go look at your pantry. Count how much of what is in there will be gone within the year. Then imagine a shelf that feeds your family for the next 25. The pioneer woman built that shelf with her own 2 hands, and now, because you watched to the end, so can you.